Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Volpe Bazzo Report. We are taping here on November 6th, the day after the elections. And just to remind you, my column is every week in the Yorktown News. And just keep in touch because we'll be reviewing these races next week in the paper and what they mean. But to talk about now what they mean now, I've got two of the smartest political people in any room I'm not in to give us. Actually, I shouldn't say that because whatever I've learned about politics, inside, outside, however you want to, strategies, I learned from my guest Mike Morey.
How are you?
And Darren
Hey,
who is always, our regular political commentator.
I only agreed to be here because Dominic Volpe I thought was going to be here.
I thought so too, but I guess my ties. But anyway, Mike, it's been a year now because we went over the elections last year with you, and when I talked to you about that, I says we got to do this again.
Sure.
What are you doing now since then? Because you were on Christine Quinn's campaign.
Sure.
But you did not go to Bazzo.
No. So we ran Christine Quinn's Democratic primary for mayor of New York City. We working on Sean Eldridge's race for Congress in the Upper Hudson Valley. And we've got candidates across the country. We did.
So you got your plate full.
Yeah. I've got a lot on my plate.
Any Republicans?
No.
Yeah, just curious.
I heard there are some good ones out there somewhere. I just haven't met them yet.
I remember you said that when I run as a Republican.
Okay.
And now, Darren, what have you been doing? What are you up to now that this election season is over?
I'd like to get hired by Sean Eldridge running for Congress. That sounds great.
Do you have anything on your plate, though, scheduled right now?
No, we're still, most of our clients, most of my clients are congressional members, so it's kind of the off year right now, so they're fundraising, preparing for next year, trying to win back the House,
So you do
which
have
looks
a full
terrific.
plate. That's what I'm saying. You do have a full plate.
We do, and I'm still in the city council.
Yes, you are. You're still on the city council. Now, just before we go into the actual, is it still going to be majority Democrat council when this shakes out, you think?
It looks like
Both go.
yeah. Look, it looks like it's going to be overwhelming Democratic majority in the council, probably 5-2, which is a pretty strong number. I mean, there are some votes you have to take in the Peekskill Common Council that require 5 votes. It means that you might have a Republican mayor, but you have the city's going to still be run by Democrats. So, it's going to be important for the new mayor to sort of figure out how to work with that majority.
Well, like I said, being that you haven't been here for a year, and I'll let Darren chime. Give the audience the rundown where it stands at this point in the Peekskill race. From,
This doesn't air this week, right? This will air like in a couple weeks.
It'll air next week.
Right.
So
yeah, so
I
look,
said
look,
that's why I said the
day
day we're
after,
taping.
right.
Where do we stand now? What does it look like? Does it look like Mary Foster is going to stay mayor? Or do you think does it look like Frank Catalina did an upset?
Based on the unofficial tallies that the parties took in on election night, it looks like Frank Catalina is probably going to be the mayor of Peekskill. It looks like on the Common Council, though it's fairly tight.
There's only about 3 or 4 votes separating each of these.
Well, that's based on what the Board of Elections has.
Right,
like
that's
80
this
some
is
odd
going
percent.
on my
But
computer. I shut off before.
Exactly.
Based on what the parties, the Republican and Democratic parties collected last night, it looks like you will have Drew Claxton reelected, Mary Beth McGowan, and possibly the pickup of a Republican seat. It looks like maybe Joe Torres.
I always told Darren you were going to get one Republican in this race. I didn't think Catalina sealed the deal.
You also have an overwhelming win for the special election.
Right, that's right. The special
So
election.
Vivian McKenzie is a city councilor.
Now you tell me, because we were talking about this off the air. It is so close in the council race.
Right.
I mean, really. Even double digits max and low double digits max, right? Low double digits.
Right.
But in that special election, she kicked butt.
She did.
The Democrat.
Vivian McKenzie.
Right.
but it was a one-on-one race, so it's a very
Right,
different
but
race.
what do you think is the difference that people were so decisive in that one, but with the council race?
Well, so there are 2 dynamics at play. In the
Right.
council race, there are 6 people vying for 3 spots.
Right.
So the way in which it's not an either-or option. You have the ability to pick 3 Republicans, 3 Democrats, 2 Republicans, 1 Democrat. So you're never going to get that kind of clear distinction. But that being said, look, there was what you see the differences at the mayoral race versus the city council race is there seems to be Mary had been mayor of Peekskill for 6 years now. She was going for a 4th term. That would have given her 8 years in the Common Council. She's been in charge for quite some time. there was a very negative race this time. Probably, look, I've run many races in Peekskill. I would say
I know you have.
I'd say that this was probably the nastiest.
You both were Democrat Party chairmen in Peekskill.
Correct.
So, and Darren, before we go on, what is your assessment? Do you concur with Mike that this was probably the nastiest?
Well, we're not, I'm no longer the party chair. We have
No,
a
I know
terrific
that.
party chair in Peekskill now, Marina
I know
Ciotti,
that,
who
but you
did
got
a
to
really
sit on
great
the
job.
sideline a bit.
She did a terrific job as chair. But it was probably one of the most negative, and not only negative, but also just like the personal attacks. The politics of personal destruction that we saw was really to a new level.
So I got to ask you, so in Yorktown, when they do this, politics of personal destruction, it hurts the sender, not the recipient. This has been the history for about 5-6 years for election cycles now, that when they do these hit pieces on a kid, that the people in Yorktown turn against the sender and they punish. But in Peekskill, it seems it's the opposite. What is the dynamic that changes?
Look, there's two things. One, in Yorktown is a larger community. It's sort of geographically larger. There's less of a sort of coffee counter.
But I'm just saying the dynamic.
Yeah. There's less of a coffee counter sort of gossipy which Peekskill has, being such a small, sort of geographically small, and it's a city. The core is sort of everyone has access to everyone.
Right.
That's one thing. Look, I think also negative attacks on women are much more can be much deadlier, for lack of a better word.
Well, you worked the campaign
Look,
just this.
I know this by practice, and I know this by science. I mean, the fact is, it is. Women candidates have a very different threshold in which they have to run. They have to be tough enough, but not too tough, and can't be, we're on basic cable, but can't be seen as a bitch.
You could say it on basic cable. I used the S word last time. Darren
You did.
on
I was
the-
shocked.
Right.
So
So you have to be very careful about that. And if there's one thing people know, and I think that even people who may not have voted for Mary, I think that what they would see is that Mary has been a fairly effective administrator for the city of Peekskill. She's tough. She isn't one to sort of pander.
She didn't win 3 terms out of that.
Right, she's not one to pander, and that's a good thing in an administrator. It may not always be the best thing for a politician, and tough women are seen in a very different light than tough men. So I think that so then when you throw barbs and sort of insults and sort of attacks against a woman, and you frame her as nasty and vindictive and bitchy, those are things that stick on a woman much differently than they do a man.
So tell me now, the race between Mayor and
And also, if I could just add, Andy,
Yeah,
I think
of
it
course.
becomes slightly self-fulfilling with the negative campaigning, in that because people ran such negative personal attacks, they might have won. And now it's almost as if the voters rewarded them for bad behavior. So what message, what signal does that send for the next election?
that's what I'm
what
asking
happens 2
you
years
guys.
from now?
This is your field
They,
of expertise.
they bring a gun to a knife fight. The other team feels like they have to bring guns to the fight, and it
bazooka.
just a bazooka to the fight. Yeah, and it spirals in a negative way.
But 2 years is such a lifetime away in politics.
The campaign starts today for the next 2 years.
Well, yeah, because you got to run for re-election. Are you going to run for re-election?
I am
Well,
not.
there's time. There's time for the next
Yeah.
election.
Yeah, plenty of time.
There's nobody listening. You get between us.
And
We're just
Vivian
friends.
McKenzie has to run again, which is interesting because her special
That's
election
right.
is only to fill the rest of Don Bennett's seat, and then she's up again. So
So this is so it's not over yet for certain for her. She's
No.
got to run next year, right?
she gets sworn in on Monday. It's interesting. She
and
has to
on
be sworn in
Tuesday,
again.
she gets sworn at.
That's
So,
No, that's Monday as well.
That's Monday later, yeah.
But now the mayor's race, there was a difference, a greater difference in the vote between Mary and Catalina, where the council race is so close. Why would you didn't think why is not the spread almost parallel?
So there are a couple things at play. I think one is that the top of the ticket, there was the two names at the top of the ticket are always the one that people sort of are driven to the polls based on. You would assume that if Mr. Catalina's lead over Mayor Foster was 100, 110 votes, you'd see that same spread
That's
among
what I'm asking.
right, the same spread among his running mates over the Democrats on the council, which should suggest that perhaps people just thought it was time for a new mayor, that they still want Democratic control, but there was only one other option than the mayor they have, who happens to be a Republican.
You know, when I was asked by my customers, my focus group in the cab, as you call them, about what I thought about Peekskill, and I always said that I like Mary Beth because I thought, there's going to be a Republican on the council. I always believed that one Republican was going to win. I thought it was going to be Hanslick, and I may still be right. It's that close, but I may, I could be wrong, but you needed a Republican that can play well with others, because it's going to be important now to be able to play well with others. And that's why I always liked you and Mary, because, and I also, and I'm sorry that Andy Torres isn't going to be there, because you guys knew that it was Peekskill, not Democrat Peekskill, that mattered. You when it came to the local politics, you actually kept, it was the city. It wasn't, the national issues that interfered with your judgment on city issues. And that's why we've remained friends in all this, because on local issues, we're not really that far apart.
Well, I think it's interesting. I mean, Mike hit the nail on the head. I think that at the end of the day, we're going to have a Democratic majority in the city of Peekskill. It's probably going to be 5-2. I'm not sure if the changes will be massive legislative changes for that reason. It might just be more stylistic changes with kind of a different mayor kind of running the city council.
See,
meetings.
my only hope is they don't do what Kathy Paisani did. And I wrote a column on this, if you remember. Nobody's wrong 100% of the time. She was always the no vote. No matter what it was, she was the no vote. Nobody's, and you remember I wrote the 4 things Mary was doing right. Nobody's wrong 100%. You can't always say no, because then you lose credibility.
Right.
When somebody's right, you must acknowledge that they're correct. This way, when you go back on the attack, then you have some standing. And they're not just saying, oh, he never said anything good about this person. And you made sure I didn't fall into that trap. That's one of the things you taught me. You don't fall into that trap. If I'm going to have credibility in my criticisms, I have to be able to.
Of course.
And I owe you a lot for helping me establish credibility when it came to that.
And whoever the new city council person is that might be coming in, they're coming in at a fantastic time. We just this week broke ground on a brand new park, Peekskill Landing Park, over on the
They'll
riverfront.
take credit for it, don't worry.
December, opening up the new Holiday Inn in Peekskill, which is going to generate a lot of new tourists and visitors, which is what we've been talking about for a long time, and that was turning Peekskill into a destination city.
Now, do you think the Branson loss to Astorino, did the Branson race had any effect in Peekskill?
Well, what I think it did for sure was Astorino spent an insurmountable amount of money countywide. I certainly think it had an effect on top of the fact that Catalina spent much more money than Mary Foster did on the race. So, look, there was certainly an advantage in their arsenal. And I think that the Astorino campaign was fairly efficiently run, was well-oiled. And I think that the margins of which he probably, look, there's no doubt he probably lost Peekskill, but I think the margins by which he lost Peekskill are probably not as high as they normally would be, and I think that effort countywide certainly had an impact.
Oh, you think Astorino lost Peekskill? He's the here.
I would be shocked if Astorino won Peekskill.
Well, this was to see, you weren't here for the tape. In Yorktown, I didn't know if they placed the signs in Peekskill, but in Yorktown there was a bunch of signs that sprouted up. Astorino, Tea Party Republican. And these were by the Branson people. Though everybody thought it was the Astorino people, because Yorktown, that's not going to drive votes away from Astorino.
Right.
That's it. But if they put those signs up in Peekskill, now they would have a different connotation.
Correct. There's no doubt in my mind the Astorino, the efficiency of that campaign certainly had dividends in Peekskill for the Republican Party. But again, I would be shocked. Utterly shocked if Astorino won Peekskill. There hasn't been a Democrat countywide or a federal official who has won the city of Peekskill in
8 years.
Probably more than a decade. I mean, even when you have sort of placeholder names on a congressional ballot in this city, the Democrat still wins.
I know, because I want to ask you, because Testa won by the biggest margin he ever won by. Mm-hmm. I mean, really? Mm-hmm. Why? Well, I mean, I thought Dwayne Jackson was a credible candidate. He was a bona fide hero. Yeah, and I thought he was a credible candidate, and he was an elected official
most people don't know. You walk out this door and you ask someone, they have no idea who Dwayne Jackson is, and that he's a bona fide hero.
And also, when they redrew the district for Mr. Testa, they
2 years ago, right? They made it
a super Republican district.
They made it the red district.
Correct. Right? They removed election districts from Peekskill and gave that to Catherine Borgia, who I love. Catherine's terrific. But they added some Republican districts, and that was done to protect people like Mike Kaplowitz.
Right. Because
so Testa's district is actually a safer district.
My line about Dwayne Jackson was, he was going to win by running a Steve campaign. Nobody was going to see him. I've never seen a candidate run such a quiet.
Although Twain's still an elected official, even now
Right.
he's still
That's
a
what I
trustee
mean.
in Buchanan.
Well, I mean, that was the thing about my stuff in the Yorktown race. You didn't have to choose between Bianco and Grace. Bianco was still a sitting councilman for 2 more years, so you could have both. And it's going to turn out to be right because Grace won. He got Democrats to vote Republican. I don't know how he did that. You got to admit that's not an easy thing to do. You got to admit that. I'll be honest with me, that's not an easy. Because he only had the one line, Republican. Yet. I wrote that because they're so strong personalities, and with Paganelli winning highway superintendent, that those you needed the checks and balances. They were both strong enough to stand up to each other to keep each other in check. Because no matter who won the council seats, was a bunch of linguini spines. You needed so Bianco and Grace with Grace winning, there was actually a checks and balance. In Peekskill, how do you see the checks and balance?
Look, so here's my advice to Mr. Catalina and to the Democrats on the council will be this. I think that Mr. Catalina will be the mayor in name. He won't be able to run the city. There'll be a supermajority of Democrats who will be running
And
the
there's
city.
still a city manager, where
There's
unlike
still
your town, it's the supervisor does run the town.
What Mr. Catalina is going to need to do, which he didn't do all that well in the campaign, he ran a very hard sort of anti-Mary Foster campaign. He's going to have to realize that you've got to work with other people. My advice to him would be to work collaboratively with the council. I think that it will benefit him as mayor.
Play well with others.
Otherwise, he has the possibility of being an inept mayor controlled by 5 Democrats.
I think in Yorktown, this race was so nasty because they're not used to it like you guys are. They're really not used to it.
We have thick skin in Peekskill.
That there's going to be friendships that will never be mended again after this race. For long time friendships. We're going back 18, 20-year friendship. But in Peekskill, it's a little bit, like you said, a thicker skin. Can, after a campaign like this, be a fence mending time? Is it possible?
It is possible, but
I'm not saying is it a long shot. Is it in the realm of possible?
Of course, it's possible. It requires commitment on all sides. I don't think you can continually run races and expect to build goodwill with things like taking pictures of people's private homes, or posting people's personal taxes on the internet. I mean, those are just really, frankly, disgusting things to do. And if that's the kind of way in which the relationships and the interaction between the two parties is going to work, then no, it can't be done. But I will say this to you: historically,
that's what I'm asking you. You guys
historically,
got this institutional knowledge.
Look, the last time, the last generation of Democrats to run the city of Peekskill before Mary Foster Drew Claxton was in the late 1970s. And when the Pataki sort of end of the Republican Party emerged, they eviscerated the Democrats with very, very vicious tactics. It was successful. For 20 years. Henceforth, you basically had 2 things happen. One, you had good candidates decide that they were no longer interested in running because they wouldn't want to go through that meat grinder. And then 2, it allowed them to consolidate power over such a long period of time. It was impossible to sort of reorganize and compete. It takes people with a lot of spine to go through that meat grinder. And it will make a lot of people gun shy to do it. It's a tactic. I hope that is not the way in which the GOP in Peekskill wants to go moving forward. If they're able to sort of check that natural instinct, then they'll be able to work together with others. If not, 2 things can happen. There will be open warfare at all times, or frankly, if it's strategic, they'll just scare the living daylights out of anyone from running anymore.
You're funny. I've known you for a long time, and you always put a happy face on politics. You're going to have to now work with Republicans. Are you able to do that?
Well, I think,
our friendship notwithstanding.
Well, here's the difference. I'm on the council, and I believe it's going to be a 5-2 Democratic-led council. The question is, will the new mayor be able to work with us? Not, we're going to move the city forward with the vision that we've already told the people of Peekskill about our vision, what we'd like to accomplish, and they reelected all of these Democrats to run the city council and to move the city forward. So we're going to move forward with that vision that we have. The question is, Frank Catalina most probably won this race. He spent probably upwards over $75,000, a number we've never seen in the city of Peekskill before. $75,000 for a part-time mayor's job
just on
that
the
pays
big
$12,000
signs. Just
a
on
year.
those big signs.
Just on signs. No, it's not just signs. But it's a part-time mayor that makes $12,000 a year. So he has to ask himself, now that he's made this investment of time and money, what does he want to accomplish out of this position? And if he wants to accomplish anything, he's going to have to be able to work with all of us moving the city forward.
Well, that's what I said that in Yorktown, and I guess it's true at Peekskill. Everybody only has one vote. There is no veto.
Correct.
So when you talk about having to work with the council, it's that the mayor can't just decree his will any more than a Yorktown supervisor can decree their will. Am I correct?
Correct.
But
There are certain authorities that come to the mayor.
No, but I understand. No, but Yorktown, we don't have a powerful city manager.
No.
We have a powerful supervisor.
Correct.
How much does the city manager now put the brakes on and try to keep everybody from choking each
an
other?
effective city manager will try to get everyone to work well together, but at the end of the day, the city manager is the administrator whose job it is to execute the will of the majority of the common council. But Darren's point is well taken, and it's really important to say it again. The voters did elect, it looks like, Frank Catalina as mayor of Peekskill. They also elected a supermajority Democratic council. There is an agenda that has been presented by that Democratic majority. There's a progressive vision for the city of Peekskill. Mr. Catalina is going to have to figure out how to fit himself into that narrative.
Okay, good. I'm glad you both said this, because I was hoping you would say this. Because how come when the mayor is in the minority, and you have a majority of Democrats, and so the mayor has to help fit into because the mayor, the council was elected,
Right.
and they were elected on a vision.
Correct.
How come it doesn't work in national politics? All you hear is the president won, thy will be done. Like the people in Congress didn't win their elections.
Well,
They didn't. They ran a campaign. Every damn one of them, to say we are going to oppose this.
Right.
So then they oppose this, and you guys come out, your party comes out and says, oh, no, the president was elected.
Yeah,
How come it doesn't work like
The
that?
president has a strong executive position with the power of veto and checks and balance against the legislature.
Yeah, but doesn't
Local
work? But
governments don't have that.
when the people vote for their,
Right,
and they
no,
say we're going to divide government.
Yeah.
We're going to divide government. This was a conscious choice by the American people to divide this government.
Well, you assume the American people is a singular individual. It's not a conscious decision, because the people who voted for the member who's opposed to Obamacare did not vote for the President of the United States. But your point's well taken. The issue is this. I don't think there's anyone who questions whether you were elected on an agenda, it is and a vision, it is now your responsibility to fulfill that commitment to the voters who elected you. No one disputes that.
Yes, they do.
No,
They do it all the time.
Well, no, I think you're misreading what's being disputed. I think what's being disputed is, okay, you've had your piece, you've had your say, you've had your votes. And then when those votes come to a conclusion and policy is enacted, it's a very different degree to then say that, but wait, even though I legitimately lost the legislative battle, for me to then go and basically firebomb the castle.
No, because the law you were fighting over was not the law, number one, that was voted by that Democrat Congress and Democrat Senate. Remember, they didn't allow the Republicans to play in that ballpark.
Well,
Let me finish. It wasn't the law that they voted on. The Supreme Court ruled on a law and changed the law.
No, incorrect.
It isn't incorrect.
It was voted on by both houses of Congress and signed by the President of the United States.
Means nothing, because that didn't work with George Bush. I'm sorry about that. I remember all the Democrat attacks. We have the right to protest. What was Hillary's right?
What they didn't do, Andy, what they didn't do was shut down the government.
They couldn't.
I suppose that. Well, they didn't have. It depends on when they have a majority.
No, you had a threat to get rid of the filibuster,
right.
And then the gang of seven jumped ship.
Which is not a constitutional right.
Right,
the
but they jumped ship. But they jumped ship to prevent the elimination of the filibuster.
Right.
So you had a lot bit more where people kind of work together. This is a lot more polarizing on both parts. You have people.
Go ahead.
Let me go back. Anyway, we got a law that is not the same law that was voted and signed by the president. It is not the same. It has been amended 17 times by executive fiat, which it's not allowed to be because it's a law. It never went through the process to get these so when you tell me about a law that was voted on by both houses, signed by the president, well, it's not the same law.
Well,
it doesn't exist.
It is the same law.
No, it's not.
But I think part
we
of
digress. Are we talking local politics?
Part of but tying it into local politics. What we're talking about moving forward, the city of Peekskill. I think that the voters and the communities, and why you're seeing sometimes very low voter participation, is the frustration that they get when their elected officials aren't trying to move forward.
That's the point.
Move forward. But here's the problem that we had with the Tea Party shutting down the government, trying to overturn Obamacare. They're looking backwards.
Actually, it was the Democrats
They're
that shut
looking
down
at-
the government, not the Tea
they're
Party.
looking at things that
let's
happened-
deal with the actual fact that
They're
it was
looking
Harry Reid in
backwards.
the Senate that shut down the government, not the Republicans.
That's inaccurate.
And if they had wonderful proposals, they can move
But
forward.
no, I tell you, I'll go with you on your point, though. I think what frustrates people, you won on something. You won on something. And then you turn around and say, oh, well, that didn't count. And I'm talking about this is karma. And they say, well, that's just politics. But it's not, because people get frustrated. You said, I'm going to run and I'm going to help lower your taxes, and I'm going to help make sure we bring business in, and I'm going to try to smooth the way for people to come in. No, I'm going as a general thing.
Right,
I'm not
right.
saying this was the campaign theme. and
But wait,
think
but
so.
just one caveat to your hypothetical. I'm running. I'm going to lower taxes by 10%. Is what the campaign is. But then when you get into a legislative body and you're negotiating and you say, well, I can't get 10, but I can get 6. And but then you have an entire caucus of individuals who say, the damn with the 6. We said 10, no.
But I think what people get frustrated, people now, we're talking about the voters, because we're talking about low voter turnout. What people get frustrated is when they won't even fight for the 6. They just say, oh, to hell with it. I'm not. I'm going to raise your taxes instead. I think that's what frustrates people.
Right.
Quickly before we close shop here, the county executive race. What happened? It's 2-1 Democrat.
The Democrat wasn't going to win this race, and I know the registration advantage suggests that what I would tell you to look at this. 2 countywide elected Democrats, Janet DeFiore and Tim Idoni, passed on the chance to run for county executive. They had countywide name recognition. They had an apparatus to run countywide, and in a county 2-1 registration advantage, but they chose not to run. Why is that? Because it was very clear that in the course of the last 4 years, Astorino hasn't made any major mistakes. He has, to most degrees, fulfilled his campaign commitments, which was there would be no new taxes under an Astorino regime. There haven't been. Now, has his administration been great? There have been all kinds of cuts that have hurt people. There have certainly been some mechanical things he's done to keep the tax levy, reduce the tax levy. But at the end of the day, most of the folks who were going to compete in this race had done their own polling and knew that it would be which is why the entire race was run from Branson's side on social issues.
Question. You think in the final weeks, because I saw the commercials and I was telling you about the lawn sign, that Branson focusing on like abortion, where the county executive has nothing to do with.
It was the only option. It was the only option. You couldn't win on a tax argument. The only thing you could have him on, and the polling showed, was that Astorino was weak on those issues. That's the only thing you could do.
But I'm saying, does the voting tell you that the people were more concerned about the financial issues than they were on the social issues?
Yes.
That's what I'm asking.
That is
Do
absolutely.
you think he made a tactical
No,
mistake?
I think he executed the only strategy he could have employed.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. And we saw nationally things like the use of the language of Tea Party. It's down to like 27, 28%.
Yeah.
So off the polling, that's you do what you have to do and you try.
Well, listen, it's good to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
Yep, Darren, you of course you'll be back regularly.
Absolutely.
Mike, I assume.
I'll see you next year.
No.
Once a year.
I think you're a little bit freer now that you can come back more often.
All right, I'll try to.
I want Dominic to come back.
I want Dominic back too.
Yeah, I was only here for one reason, and then you're sitting there.
I understand that. I understand that. I wouldn't want to sit with me either.
I enjoy sitting with you, Andy.
No, it's always fun doing this. The idea was to get your expertise into these things in your outline. Dave had a different vision, so it works great. It really works great. Because